There's an old image of a circus elephant, a creature strong enough to uproot trees, standing quietly tied to the ground by nothing but a thin rope and a small wooden stake. It could break free in a single step, but it doesn't even try. Why? Because when it was young and small, it was tied to that same stake. And back then, it pulled and strained and failed again and again, until one day it simply stopped trying. The rope never got stronger. The elephant just learned it was powerless. And whether or not that's literally true of elephants, it is devastatingly true of people. Many of us are held in place by a rope that snapped years ago, one we've simply stopped testing. The science behind this has a name: learned helplessness. It comes from a set of famous and ethically heavy experiments by Martin Seligman and Seligman Maier in 1967. They worked with two groups of dogs. One group could press a panel to stop a mild electric shock. They had control. The other group received the same shocks, but nothing they did made any difference. No control, no escape, no matter what. Then came the real test. Both groups were placed in a box, where escaping the shock was easy. Just hop over a low barrier to the safe side. The dogs who'd had control quickly learned to jump, but most of the dogs from the no-control group didn't even try. They lay down and endured it, even though escape was right there. They hadn't learned how to escape. They'd learned that trying was pointless. And this is the trap, because helplessness isn't really about your situation. It's about that one sentence burned into your mind. Nothing I do matters. It's why people stay in jobs and relationships that grind them down long after the door is open. It's part of why poverty can pass from one generation to the next, as the belief that effort is futile gets inherited like an heirloom. It's why a child who is constantly criticized eventually stops raising their hand. It's why depression so often feels less like sadness and more like paralysis. The cruelest part, once helplessness is learned in one corner of life, it spreads, leaking into brand new situations that you actually could change. But the story takes a turn, and this is the part that can set you free. As Seligman kept digging, he found that helplessness wasn't the whole story. What mattered just as much was your explanatory style, the way you explain bad events to yourself. Face a setback and think this is temporary. This is just this one thing. This was the circumstances. And you tend to bounce back. But think this is permanent. This ruins everything. This is all my fault. And you sink into helplessness. In other words, what often defeats you isn't the event itself. It's the story you tell about the event. And here's the hopeful flip. If helplessness can be learned, then so can its opposite. Optimism, too, is a skill you can train. So step back and the real picture appears. The rope is usually in your mind, not around your leg. The cage you're so sure of. How many of its doors have you actually walked up and pushed on lately? When was the last time you genuinely tried to clear that low barrier instead of just assuming from old memory that you can't? Helplessness survives on one thing: you no longer testing reality. It quietly counts on you never checking whether the wall is still there. So here's how you start checking. First, reattribute. Catch the words "I can't" and rewrite them as "that approach didn't work" or "not yet." Make the failure specific and temporary, not permanent and total. Second, reclaim a small sense of control. Do one tiny thing you can fully command, and let your brain relearn that your actions have effects. Third, break the giant wall into low steps, because helplessness feeds on facing something overwhelming, and a small win starts to dissolve it. Fourth, interrogate that voice saying it's useless. Is that a fact, or just the echo of an old wound? And fifth, when the barrier really is too high, change your environment or ask for a hand. Sometimes clearing it is meant to be a team effort, not a solo one. Because the most quietly devastating thing about learned helplessness is the way it makes you stop testing reality at all. That rope around your leg may have snapped 20 years ago, but you'll never know while you refuse to pull. So today, find one low barrier you've long decided you simply cannot clear. And then, just as an experiment, take a single step toward it. So tell me, what's one rope you've been standing still for that you've never actually tested?